Command Point now has merch. Link in the description. Warzone Studio was kind enough to send out a couple of their battle mitts for us to review, and I have to say, you guys, I absolutely love them. The mats we received have the kill team layout on them, making it quicker and easier to place objectives and terrain pieces to create a good play experience. The mousepad material the mats are made from is an upgrade from the foldable cardstock boards that you are used to seeing come in kill team boxes. Warzone Studio are even helping support the channel by giving us a kickback for each order placed using the link in the description below. So make sure to check them out, and thank you to Warzone Studio for sponsoring this video.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Command Point, and welcome to the 7th day of Kill Team, where we have a very exciting, pretty interesting faction, I think. We're going to be talking about the Exaction squad today, and I am joined by Blaine from Six Sided Legion, who is an avid fan. I don't know, avid, but you're an enjoyer of the Exaction squad, and it's cool to have you on. So, Blaine, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about Exaction Squad. It is, like you said, a very interesting team.
For sure, and I mean, obviously their current standing not being a super competitive choice, I was like having to like figure out like, wait, who are the really good players that actually like Exaction Squad? And then I remembered you were super into them right when they came out, and I know we talked about them a little bit in Atlanta, so I'm super happy to have you on here. Um, I guess to start for somebody like, say somebody's getting into Kill Team or they're already into Kill Team but they want to pick a new faction, and they're just really captured by the Arbites like aesthetic, like the Judge Dredd space cop vibe. How would you, as somebody that's played them a lot, describe the play style of Exaction Squad?
Um, so that's an interesting topic to me personally because if you just kind of take it at face value, a lot of their rules, a lot of just kind of the things that you want to do with the team, uh, like forces you to be super close to the enemy. Probably fighting over like the middle of the board and getting as close as you can. Hence the ruthless efficiency ability and some of their ploys to get re-rolls within 4 inches, or their tac ops also require you to be pretty close. Um, but then you've got things like gunners, the marksmen, the revelatum, who all want to be far back because they're unlimited range, and they aren't the toughest models on their own. So it's got a kind of a complex play style to me, at least, where you have to have almost a front line, and then you have to play very strategically with your back line in hopes that you don't get overrun too quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very unlike any other like Horde team in a way. They're very weird, and I think a lot of people are like kind of not only like the current power level, of course, is a thing that's part of it, but just the fact that they're really different, I think, doesn't doesn't help for somebody coming into it like with a fresh take. But
Yeah, it's to me it was a little weird starting to play them. And my first experience playing them was narrative stuff, and
Mhm.
I've played them a lot outside of narrative as well. Um, and they're definitely difficult to pick up and just start to learn how to play because they have so many weird little tricks, and like you have like melee operatives that aren't super great in melee, but then when you start to pair them up with like guys with shotguns, they start to become a lot better.
Mhm.
So you definitely have to play them way differently than any like 10 or 11 man team.
So what about the that playstyle that we're kind of talking about appealed to you? Like what drew you in to continue playing Exaction Squad?
So personally, it's a mix between both their faction ability as well as their ability to kind of take board control if need be. Um, their faction ability allows them to shoot into combat as long as they're within 6 inches of their target. Um, and then you have things like the castigator who can arrest people and deny them from falling back and doing stuff. You've got the dog that can also deny falling back, and you've even got a tactical ploy to stop your opponent from doing scouting. So it feels very thematic and very on point with what you think cops would do in the 41st millennium,
Yeah.
right? Um, as well as a combination of having the tools to kind of shut off certain teams. Such as like playing into Cult or Gellerpox. This team I feel can do a lot of work, whereas some teams kind of struggle into those teams. So that's my personal take, I think, and that's kind of why I keep playing them and keep trying to get better at them.
Nice, really cool. And I mean, I think we've seen at this point in this game's life that no team stays bad forever. And eventually, I'm sure Exaction Squad, the balance team has done really well, in my opinion, and I'm sure Exaction Squad is going to have their time in the sun. Wouldn't be surprised if it comes pretty soon. Um,
Oh, I am very hoping that
yeah,
they do.
that would be sweet. So I guess let's turn the page a little bit. I really like to ask this question. This is probably my favorite question that I do in these, and I did it last year. And I think one of the trickiest things about learning a new team, whether you're a seasoned player or a new player, the trickiest part about picking up a new faction for me is playing on Turning Point 1 and figuring out what do I want to do on Turning Point 1? What's a good choice to make? What are my win conditions? So for you with Exaction Squad, how do you typically like to approach the first turn of the game?
So first turn for me is it's like every other team. It's a very important turning point because it's your setup, right? You're trying to set up for the turn two plays and trying to make most impact for later game. Um, and with Exaction, it's again, it's a little weird because it depends on what team you're playing against because there's so many different operatives. You know, you've got your subductors that you can take up to four of. You've got like the Revelatum and the Malicator who serve different purposes. And I think for me, most of the time, I'm trying to push up my subductors, the shields,
Mm-hmm.
um, into positions on objectives, so that way I can use my ploy that gives them a reroll on objectives to make them kind of statues to hold like the front line a little bit better. Um, Especially because if they get charged and fought, it's pretty likely that they're going to survive because of the defensive profiles of those shields, as well as then setting up a turn two dog and leash master combo. I'm a big fan of those operatives just because they have so much flexibility in how you go about like activating them. Um, as well as they can set up some super good like one for twos in the first turning point or the second turning point, like first activation, that can really swing one side of the board. Um, Outside of that, it's pretty much setting up the marksman or any gunners that you take into very good positions, either concealed up on a vantage point that they can't get shot right away, or giving them an extra APL for the next turn so that way they can move, dash, and shoot somewhere if they need to. It really just depends on the team that you're going into.
Nice. Well, you mentioned the dog, and I've noticed a lot more lately, like Exaction Squad players saying that they like the dog, and it was kind of wild because at first nobody liked it, and I think there's some pretty cool play patterns that are cropping up with that model.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I started my first couple of games not taking the dog and leash master just because I wanted to play around with a little bit more of the gunners and the specialists.
Hmm.
But after some play and after some discussion with some friends, I think the dog and leash master are just super powerful together. And it's similar if you think of them like the blessed blades from Cult,
Yeah,
but they actually have shooting and like other uses, right? Like
yeah.
their only use is not just to, swing in and kill some stuff. It's definitely very flexible.
Yeah, they're almost like you can kind of almost treat them as like one model that has the possibility of being two models if you need them to. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
it's cool. So I guess on another note, I want you to try and think back whether it was at a tournament or at your local store, and try to imagine the coolest play you've ever made with Exaction Squad, where somebody at like another table could have seen it and been like blown away by the faction and like whoa, this is a cool team actually. So I guess in your mind, what's the spiciest, flashiest Exaction Squad play you've made?
Um, it's rough because I don't think this team has a ton
Hmm.
of super cool things they can do. I know in one of my games against Cult on Into the Dark, it wasn't necessarily something I did, but my opponent made a torment turn two like normal and charged it into one of my subductors and my leader who had a shield. He then decided to fight the subductor, um, and after two individual fight actions using their ploy to fight twice, the subductor ended up killing the torment and living at 4 health.
Whew.
Um, and doing that in the Torment Zone activation was I felt like I could have taken on the world with this team. Um, so I want to say that's probably the coolest thing that's ever happened while I've played the team. Um, Now, when it comes to like the coolest thing I've done with my own operatives, would probably have to be the I almost want to say the dog and leash master, honestly. Um, Playing into a team like Commandos, and being able to kill an orc with the dog, and then follow up by using the leash master with a third APL, moving on to an objective, taking it from the Commandos player, and then shooting and also killing a commando. So basically 2 for 1ing and grabbing an objective all in the same activation. Against a team like Commandos was huge. It was absolutely like mind blowing that that could happen.
Really cool. I love it. Um, so I guess on the topic of matchups, what would you describe as being their like best and worst matchups? And I guess more specifically, what about those matchups makes it easy or difficult? Because I think a lot of the time with the game can change a lot in 6 months, and the tough team now might not be a tough team in 6 months. So I guess what crops to your mind in terms of matchups?
Uh, so I think it's a pretty obvious one still. I believe that elites are still probably the worst matchup for Exaction Squad, and it's simply for one reason, and it's that the normal shotguns and the Subductor's melee does not hit as hard into something like Nurgle Legionaries.
Mhm.
Um, Especially when all their damage basically becomes 3/4 into those Nurgle Legionaries. And the fact that the Legionaries or any other elite player pretty much can 2 for 1 way easier than you can. Um, it's a little rough, and I believe that's just simply because the Exaction team has so much that you need to set up in order to take down a Marine pretty confidently. Whether it's setting up a P like a P1 like ruthless efficiency play, um, or like multi-charging with like a Subductor and the dog to try to take down a Marine. It takes a little bit of setup. Um, and on top of the elite matchups being a little rough for Exaction still, I probably want to say like a team like Commandos is still kind of hard to deal with, just because their melee can still kill you in 2 hits, regardless of who it is on the team, as well as their ability to tank shots that you kind of don't expect just because of just a scratch.
Mhm.
Um, and that 10 wound breakpoint is kind of hard for 4/4 damage to kind of punch through. Um, Outside of that, I think most of their other matchups are either pretty well in their favor or even at worst. They do really well into horde teams, and even like elite teams that have about the same activations. Um, just because you've got the tools to kind of deal with them, and like subductors just kind of go burr into, you know, like not great melee models. So yeah, I mean, I feel personally they're in a decent spot. They just need a couple more buffs, small things like changes, and I think that they could be fine.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, and those subductors against some teams can just there's no answer.
Oh
They're
yeah,
pretty
I mean
great.
with a 3-up save and allowing them like a reroll in defense, it can be pretty nuts,
Yeah.
especially if you have to get within 6 to shoot them, because then you just don't have rerolls.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, so next I wanted to kind of highlight like when somebody's picking up a new team, and I mean, there was a point when you were learning this team, and I'm sure you've seen other people try to play them, maybe. But there's always like these really specific mistakes that newer players make with each faction, where if like the light bulb goes and they stop doing that, the game gets so much easier. So for you, what's the mistake you see most commonly with newer Exaction players?
So I personally think that I think there's 2 mistakes, and I think one of them is pretty specific. The other is kind of generic. The specific mistake is the having attraction to the gunners on the team. Especially because you get 2 of them, and there are only 3 options. And I am a firm believer that the only good option currently is the grenade launcher, and even that you don't need in almost every matchup.
Mhm.
Um, and if I were to tell somebody starting out, um, something to watch out for, it's to not play the gunners at first and play with more subductors, play with the other specialists, and kind of get a feel for the team and their abilities before you try making the gunners work and figuring out which matchups you need them for. Um, and that was kind of a big deal for me too. Going into the team, I found that I was wanting to take the heavy stubber and the grenade launcher every game, and it kind of did not work at all. Um,
Yeah.
I and then the more generic kind of tip that I would give somebody, uh, to prevent them from making the mistake that I did, is sit down and figure out which operatives you would take into which matchups, because this is one of the teams that you could fill out almost an entire 20-man roster for, because you would use every option in some instance. Um, so figuring out like when you would want to take the leash master and the dog over, two gunners
Hmm.
or the medic or the revelatum is one of those operatives that I didn't really like at first, and now it's kind of starting to grow on me, and I've seen its uses. So it's just one of those things that you kind of have to sit down and think a little bit before your matchups and figure out what you want to take into that team.
All right. Perfect. So I guess really quick, one thing I wanted to highlight, because this can be a little more binary depending on the team. What do you like to do typically for uh, like tech ops?
Tac Ops. So in my opinion, there's only one real consistent one, and it's seize or incapacitate. It's very similar to um, assassinate target from the seek and destroy Tac Ops. You reveal at turning point one, or the target reveal step of turn one, and you pick one of the enemy operatives. And if they die during the turning point, you get a VP. And
Hmm.
then they drop a token underneath their base that you can control for the second VP at the end of the game. Um, the only thing, I guess, the only downside to that is that the dog can't pick up that token. Everybody else on the team can. And while you're carrying it, you're -2 to your movement characteristic. So it makes it a little awkward to try to pick up. But I feel like it's the most consistent out of the three faction tac ops.
Right.
Just because it you have to rely a lot less on your opponent doing something,
Hmm.
and you have the opportunity to pick something like an operative that that they're going to be moving in close with or putting in a compromising position.
Okay.
Um, Outside of that, I'm a big fan of seek and destroy. It rewards you for playing the game like
Mhm.
normal. Um, in my opinion, the other archetype security is just really bad right now. And that might just be because I don't know how to play it properly. But every time I try, I feel like I'm not even getting close to maxing my attack ops, and I have to devote resources into remembering, to move towards the center of the board and get secure center line or
Mhm.
central control, instead of going for an obvious objective like or trying to get a kill somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, it just feels a little awkward with the team, in my opinion. But some people have different thoughts. So
All right. Very cool. Um, so I guess we're getting into the last question here. Um, and this is a very important one. Naturally, last year I asked people what their favorite Christmas song was. This year I'm swapping it up, and I want to know if you have one. What is your favorite Christmas movie, Blaine?
Oh, okay. So that's a tough question because I am not a very big Christmas movie person. I
Okay.
love Christmas. It's my favorite holiday. But I don't find myself watching very many Christmas movies. If I had to pick one, it would probably be Nightmare Before Christmas. And
Nice.
you could
Okay.
argue that that's a Halloween movie,
I recently
but
had this argument actually with somebody.
I argue it's more of a Christmas movie. So and it's a childhood favorite. I've grown up watching it, and it's a great movie to me. So that would probably have to be my pick.
Awesome. No, that's a great one. I do love that movie. Um, so first of all, Blaine, thank you for coming on and joining us for the 12 Days of Kill Team. Um, thank
Of
you
course,
to
yeah. I had an amazing time. I appreciate you inviting me on. So
Absolutely, anytime. Thank you to all the subscribers, the Patreon people. You guys rock. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever's going on with you. And as always, tune in tomorrow for the 8th day of Christmas, I believe we're on, and learn about a new team. And, enjoy your holiday, hang out with your family. This is Shane and Blaine from Six Sided Legion signing out.